All right, so we've set kind of a groundwork. We're up to, let's call it the early to mid-aughts now. I hate dating ourselves in this way, but like our high school years, essentially. So hip-hop really starts getting to an interesting place where it's like de facto popular music for the first time ever.
Oh, for sure.
And you start to see these like enormous sounds emerge, like these kind of monolithic creators and camps and stuff. Being from the South, I really, really loved, always have loved, and still love Hypnotized Camp coming out of Memphis. And Juicy J and DJ Paul in particular. I love 3 6 Mafia. I love Project Pat. And I liked it because it was like, it was raw, and it was definitely not some shit that you wanted to listen to around your parents.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the most innocuous thing you could possibly pick, right?
I'm just thinking about I drove an 86 Camaro for a little bit with 2 JL Audio subwoofers in the back, just like constantly playing 3-6 and Project Pat, mostly because of you. And then like at strategic points as I started approaching my house, just like, and we're gonna crank that down, shift over to J93.3 The Joy FM, and we're gonna pull in.
It's also hard to explain to somebody who didn't grow up in the South in the 90s and early 2000s, like how important car culture and having systems in your car was. Like that was a thing, dude.
Yeah.
And I think that informed probably a lot more of this than I've ever given credit to.
And you know, the other thing that's worth pointing out about that weird time in our lives, like I'm sure this was like a weird Venn diagram of like exactly where we went to high school and the time in reality and all that, but like people who had systems in their car who were listening to 3-6 were also people who were wearing like Confederate pride stuff and like had deer stickers on the back of their giant pickup truck. Like it was not abnormal
for everyone. Weird time for race relations.
Everyone was listening to the same hip hop.
Yeah.
So it was super ubiquitous where we were. It's good context.
Yeah.
Now I'm just thinking about you driving home, listening to Slob on My Knob, like before you turn into your house,
which never happened.
If we ever get to go out drinking again and somebody puts that on at the bar, please make sure I'm not there, because like I can rap every word to that. And I used to like not share that with people ever. Like how much I love like
I understand
drinking in bars and rapping at the top of my lungs. But I'm older now, and I just get that like that's part of who I am.
I'm older now, so I have to drink 3 more beers to get to that place. Yeah.
We both know that my wife loves to goad me into doing that, so I will do that in front of people. And she gets to like sit in the corner more quietly while I go off and entertain myself. Anyway, I was two years old when I learned that Sippin' on Some Syrup, which is like one of my all-time favorite beats. I went down such a rabbit hole in middle and early high school of like trying to make beats. That was probably another thing.
Fruity Loops?
Fruity Loops, and then I had some freeware program that was just like a 16-bar thing. And you just clicked it on and off, and like you could like upload MP3 sounds and whatever. And it was such a signature thing to like, you did the closed hi-hat because of 3 6 Mafia.
Definitely.
Such a signature. And it was only a lot later that I learned Sippin' on Some Syrup had come from a Marvin Gaye song. So like two things I felt like had been kept from me until that moment. One, that it was sampled. 2, that it was hidden away on this Marvin Gaye record that like got trashed for a long time. Here, My Dear, the one with the statue on the cover. But I listened to it, and it's like, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Marvin Gaye records. And so I was like, hell you guys been? Like, what's wrong, internet? But is that enough? The Marvin Gaye song comes in with like this weird synth weird kind of overdriven synth sound. And that then becomes the sound that they actually reproduced instead of straight up sampling. So it's almost more of an interpolation. And then it has some of the weird, like, I don't even know what you call the synth or instrument sounds, but the doo 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 doo. It's just used so masterfully. And Juicy kind of made that the signature of his production as time went on. And he had like a call out. He had an indicator that he was about to use like a cool soul sample. He'd be like, play me some Pimp and Main at the beginning of the song. And they would find this like pimp funk stuff. They used a lot of Willie Hutch. Like if you listen to Stay Fly, which I didn't include because there's like almost no Willie Hutch on streaming. But there's a Willie Hutch song called Tell Me Why Has Our Love Turned Cold. And that is the sample used in Stay Fly. And if you listen to that alternates playlist that I hope we'll share, there's a ton of stuff that was used by him. So 3-6 has this like really scary kind of aggressive side, but then they're from Memphis and they have such a deep knowledge of soul and funk music, and they incorporated it into this like bassy, like really tight production sound that I still love so much. So the two I've included that were produced by Jay are Is That Enough by Marvin Gaye, and then a Bobby Womack interlude that was used as the basis of a Project Pat song called Gorilla Pimp. Like, so good. Can't say enough good things about that. And then this other cat comes along in the mid-2000s, and it's especially weird to talk about him right now in this exact moment. Yeah. Because he's been in the news recently, but like, begrudgingly got to give my roses to inarguably one of the greatest hip-hop producers of all time. Like, certainly a game changer, an elevator in terms of sonics and production, Kanye West. Like, I don't know that sonically anyone has had more of an impact in like later year approach to hip-hop since 04, 05. So I have 4 songs of the gazillion that I could have chosen from. A Junie song called Suzie, Thundertussy, that you will recognize as the basis of No More Parties in LA from Life of Pablo. One of the most iconic ones, Cause I Love You, the greatest love song of all time. Sampled an Overnight Celebrity with Twista and JB Foxx. An incredible song that feels like a very Cliffy type song. K-Scope by Phil Manzanera that was slowed down, like kind of syruped up, and used as the looper in No Church in the Wild. And then just the smallest part, like almost not worth including, but it is such an integral part of the song. And Brenda Lee is from Georgia and so badass. Sweet Nothings by Brenda Lee, which the honey was used in Bound 2. And we talked about Chipmunk Soul when we talked about College Dropout, but like, I just don't, I cannot wrap my head around how he's found so many different sounds and samples, how he's used them so differently. Yeah. Like, he invented the sped up thing pretty much. He does these like sonic collages. I think it really comes to a head. You like start to see it on Watch the Throne. It really comes to a head on Life of Pablo and Yeezus. He has just made such a technique out of it that it really is its own art form in the way that he does it. And again, I really cannot stand to talk about him for too long, but as a producer, the results speak for themselves.
And we spent a lot of time on it in that episode. I'm really actually glad to like, this is sort of a meta narrative across both, like we talked about Q-Tip in the Tribe episode. We talked about Kanye in the College Dropout episode, because that is, at least in our collective opinion, maybe the only period of time worth really focusing on Kanye.
I really like Yeezus a lot, but that's when you got to start separating the person from the artist. Right. So
there was enough earnestness for us to focus on the College Dropout
for
time
sure.
period.
Yeah, we don't have to have the like, but also conversation then.
but also we did because we do. But like I love being able to cover that, and like I still haven't been able to get out of my head. Like we talked about, he was always carrying around a backpack of tapes where he was just constantly setting up shop and like working through samples and putting them back in his backpack and walking around. Like for better or worse, like he was in it for the real game then. Like he really was a student of it. He was constantly trying. So like I love to draw that out. And like fact of the matter is, I can try to avoid Kanye records as much as possible because they make my mind confused about all the different aspects I'm having to include. But like just working through this playlist was like, man, Life of Pablo is so good. I got to go back to it. I can't just pretend it doesn't exist because I don't want it to.
I want to hate it so bad just because of the thing about bleaching and Father Stretch My Hands. Like on that alone, I just want to stop listening to the record. But
it sounds so good. Oh,
I know. It's and to the point that like I am psyched for those kids that got to be there when he like played it from his iPad or his iPhone in an arena with just a bunch of kids, and they were just like, I mean, that's tight. Like there's something to be said in a world that is so splintered now more than ever, like really started to splinter when the internet let you be part of whatever culture you wanted to be part of. That somebody still has the power. He has weaponized it and used it very poorly, but somebody has the power to create monocultural moments, or the closest thing to it. Like you got to just recognize that for what it is. And I think a lot of it comes from his expert use of like pulling in fragments that he uses in a totally different way than anybody else.
And this, you included Overnight Celebrity, which pumped me up because I loved that song when it came out. But it reminded me of how much of a snapshot in time the way we discovered music then was. Sure. Not only had it never existed that way before where you could go find it, but it hadn't been cataloged and then taxonomized the way music is now, where it's like, no, we have all these reasons to think this music is related. And so like actually the way we discovered stuff, the way I discovered this song was you search Napster or whatever, Kanye Twista, and then it would come up with anything that matched both of those, right? And it was almost like for a while, like hip hop was like deep SEOing, like the music download game. Because like anytime you search for somebody, you'd get first all their songs and then everything that they guessed it on. And it became this like, it was straightforward, but it became a really easy way to quickly like go into like, oh, tell me more about that artist than more. What a wild time.
You make a good point, though. That's the difference between being just a regular enjoyer of music and like a person who lets music change their life. Is just like physically the act of scrolling past the one thing you meant to download and being like, what does Result 42 sound like? I'll download it overnight on my dial-up. And see what happens in the morning. And it's like leaving bread to prove in the fridge overnight or something. And it might taste terrible, but it might be like the coolest thing you've ever discovered in your life. And just the little moment of the extra 10% has come so far in such a short time. Like I spent hours on Who Sampled, just poking around in preparation for this, and discovered so much more stuff that I can't believe that I didn't already know. So I think where a lot of people our age or older would be like, oh, the kids these days have it so easy or whatever. I'm like, no, it's tight. Kids have all the tools that I wish we'd had now. And when they use it, it's the best thing ever. Like imagine the possibilities. Imagine how much farther we'll be in 10 more years because a kid like put something together from an hour on Who Sampled. And I guess we'll get into that in the next couple of segments.